Donald Trump is trying to morally blackmail China seriously. He posted on Truth Social on Wednesday that the soybean farmers of our country are being hurt because China, for negotiating reasons only, is not buying.
Amazing viewer, I hope you agree with me. It's always expected that we reap the benefits of the consequences of our actions, good or bad. There are consequences. But from the look of things, I'm realizing that America did not expect to reap the benefits of the tariffs that they were imposing all over the world. And right now, those being affected are the people that they wanted to protect, I guess. Like the video for recommendation, and let's dive into this compilation.
Everybody's pretty nervous. Everybody's pretty scared. There's some of the older guys that, farm out of their pocket. They're like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not giving back 30 years worth of work. Everybody's scared to death.
But let's just get this straight. Trump raised tariffs on China and then expects China to just accept those tariffs and still keep buying American goods. How does that even make sense? Am I the only one who thinks this sounds like moral blackmail? At the end of the day, it's China's choice what to buy. And I do feel sorry for US farmers, but if China doesn't fight back, then Chinese businesses and farmers will suffer the same way. And Trump said he will meet with President Xi Jinping in the next 4 weeks. Whether she even agrees to meet or not is another question. We don't hear any messages about the meeting from China. But here's the thing. In China, it's simple. If you are fear to us, we'll fear to you. If the US doesn't move on tariffs, it's hard to see any real progress. So let's just wait and see. I'm Kitty Tom, bringing you a new perspective. Talk to you later.
Discouraging. We do our very best to grow a good crop to feed the world, and then we can't hardly give it away.
Many growers say they feel betrayed. Last week, the Trump administration gave Argentina a financial lifeline, a $20 billion loan. But Argentina then cut the price of its own soy exports to China, undercutting U.S. farmers. With prices for crops crashing, farmers are doing everything they can to stay viable, even selling off equipment.
U.S. is helping Argentina, giving Argentina a lot of money. The condition is that Argentina cannot get too close with China because U.S. is competing with China. And Argentina, not necessarily a strong country, but getting Argentina on the side of the United States will only help the competition. But this sounds very familiar. In the 70s, when U.S. is competing with Russia, the Soviet Union at that time, U.S. decided to help China so that China will not get too close with Soviet Union. Because although China is not particularly a strong country, getting China at the side of the United States might help the competition. But countries are not chess pieces. You might look at a country as chess pieces, but other country might not look themselves as chess pieces.
They're all retaliating. Look at the Chinese. They retaliate. As soon as Mr. Trump raises a tariff, they follow. A couple days later, not quite as high. They always want to make it very clear, we wouldn't do this, but if America does it, we're going to do it. We'll do it later. We'll do it a little less, but we'll do it. And you know what the rest of the world is feeling? Bitter, angry. The United States is trying to solve its economic problems that I've just laid out for you at the expense of the rest of the world.
You can't make this stuff up. Donald Trump announced this week that he will be using tariff money to solve a problem created by, yes, his tariffs. Yes, I am talking about the farm subsidies. Here's Donald Trump.
We're going to take some of that tariff money that we made, just to get off the subject for a second, we're going to take some of that tariff money that we made, we're going to give it to our farmers who are, for a little while, going to be hurt until it kicks in. The tariffs kick into their benefit.
Oh, I see. So we are going to take the tariff money that American consumers primarily are spending, which was supposed to go to pay off our deficit, which has exploded because of Republican tax policy, and use it to bail out farmers because why? Trump said they're hurting. Why are they hurting? Let's do a quick review. You'll remember that right after he was elected, Donald Trump put 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods, then that went up to 20%, then he added another 50%, and China retaliated. Their reciprocal tariffs went up to 125% on U.S. goods. In May, the U.S. and China reached a temporary trade agreement, reducing tariffs to 10% on most imported goods. China implemented a 30% rate on most U.S. imports, good for 90 days. But then that was extended many times. But China did something else. They revoked soybean import licenses from 3 U.S. firms. And they basically stopped buying U.S. soybeans at all. This after having spent $12.6 billion on them last year. Instead, China started buying their soybeans from South America, primarily Argentina and Brazil. And this in turn had devastating impacts on American soybean farmers. Started seeing headlines like these, and these, and these. In short, the tariffs have been an absolute catastrophe for soybean farmers across the United States. Catastrophe. So what does Donald Trump do? He commits $20 billion in U.S. taxpayer money to bail out Argentina, a right-wing government he happens to love, even though they are cleaning our farmers' clock in terms of soybean imports. Farmers everywhere are outraged, so what does Trump do? Trump decides this week to take tariff money and bail out the farmers. He's created a problem and he's making us pay to fix it. And then we're also paying to fix Argentina's economy? What? This is Trump's genius policy, break the economy with unaffordable tariffs that we're paying and then make us pay to fix the damage the tariffs did? But God forbid we ask for money to extend the ACA premium tax credits. Why would we do that when we could give it to Argentina? Remind me how this is making America great again? You can't, because it's absolute madness and you and I are paying for it.
And guess what? They don't like it. And those companies there are demanding that their government do something. And what do they want them to do? Retaliate. Hit the United States with tariffs. Make it harder for Americans to sell stuff in those countries because their people have to pay their government for a tariff.
At this point, allow me to give some flowers to China. They have cracked the code. It's time that the United States reviews its syllabus because anyway, the way they're responding to these tariffs is no longer public. It's no longer an announcement. It's no longer a game, a high school game, but it's professionally done. Check this. China has long been bullied, and this time they are not playing games.
Did you know that China is not fighting back against Donald Trump's tariffs with tariffs? Instead, China is, like Beijing, is blocking U.S. exports like beef, poultry, eggs. So they're blocking them. They cannot be imported into China from the U.S., along with natural gas. So what they're doing is China is implementing trade barriers. So they're no longer ordering products from us, including soybeans. And they are specifically targeting red states like Iowa and Nebraska. These non-tariff moves are pretty genius, I have to say. And they use things like canceled licenses that they have with beef, poultry, and stuff like that, suppliers. And what they're doing is they're calling them out on safety accusations, bacteria, disease, etc., etc. And instead, China is just shifting, and they're buying beef, poultry, and whatnot from countries like Australia. And they're getting soybeans from Brazil. And now all of the producers, mainly farmers, in the red states are absolutely freaking out because they're losing all of this money, all of these orders from China. And it's a lot of orders. So the unintended consequence of this also would mean that things like egg prices should start dropping, because if China stops buying eggs, that means these guys are going to have a surplus of eggs. And if they have a surplus of eggs, egg prices should drop. But that wasn't the goal of Trump's tariffs. But these devastating results, they can cost Trump a lot, including any political support from his base, or just from Republicans and people who voted him into office, and now they're hurting. I read this one thing on the Economic Times that said a guy named Ben Lilliston of the Institute for Agriculture said a tariff you can just pay it. But this is a full restriction. So Trump didn't see that one coming. That means no workaround sales, as he points out, just a complete stop to trade in some cases. And many people are asking, could Trump's core states feel the economic heat? And the answer is yes, and they already are. Over 90% of U.S. beef exports to China have stopped. In the same article that I read, it said, why is China targeting Trump's base with trade restrictions? And the answer is because many of the industries being hit, beef, gas, poultry, are based in red states that strongly support Trump. So China they're really playing hardball here.
You would be surprised as to how much import dependence the United States has on China, and you'd be surprised which states have the most of this dependence. As of 2024, the total share of U.S. imports from China was 13.4%. Now, I've seen other estimates ranging it higher, but let's just go with this low number and see where it takes us. Now, you would figure that the more liberal-leaning states do have higher dependence on China, and you're kind of correct. California, 25% import dependence on China. Washington has 18%. That also makes a bit more sense just because, they are in the Pacific, so they have easier transit to China for their goods and services. But New York State only having 12% import dependence on China, that was a bit of a surprise. That floored me. Pennsylvania, which does lean a lot more conservative than New York State, having 13%, that was interesting. But let's look at the more conservative states, because those are the ones that have been pushing for less import dependence on China. And this isn't an attack. I'm just literally trying to see where the argument gets fulfilled. All right, you have Tennessee, 17%, Virginia, 14%, South Carolina, 16%, Missouri, 14%, Arizona, 14%, Missouri, 17%, Illinois, 19%. Now, what's interesting is that the United States manufacturing sector has between a 14 to a 17% reliance on Chinese imports. And these aren't finished products. These are Chinese components to make American goods for sale. So no matter what foreign policies are implemented, American products are still going to be made more expensive and sold for more expensive for the sheer fact that the industry to make a lot of these components, they just aren't around anymore because it was cheaper to move them out. And if we were to bring in these essential components again, it would take at least 2-3 years to start building these sectors and the factories. And the question is, do these states like Missouri, Arkansas, even Oklahoma, Virginia, or South Carolina, Texas has a bit more wiggle room, but New Mexico or Nevada, I'm just wondering, how will their overall manufacturing sector evolve or devolve in the 2 to 3 years it takes to set up an industry to get these components back into the American economy? And remember, 2 or 3 years, that is a wildly optimistic estimate. And I mentioned these states for 2 reasons. One, their manufacturing sector pretty much props up a large chunk of the overall economy, and a shutdown or an increase in prices for 2 to 3 years may not be something that they can afford. Maybe they have to start laying off people. And the other part is, these states do get a lot of federal funding, and how much more federal funding has to be given to these states if there are a lot of economic setbacks. Now, if you want to look at every single state, I'm going to get out of the way so you could pause to read it. All right, take a look. I am the Geo Hussar, and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.
Hello, I am Chinese President Xi Jinping. Hello, I am U.S. Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent. I declare trade war. Thank you. I will no longer be buying soybeans from America. What? Hello, I am Argentinian President Javier Milei. China, we would be happy to sell you soybeans. America, I would also like an economic bailout of $20 billion. Okie dokie, artichoke.